You know who needs more love? NBA role player. The guys that are going to come off the bench, they're going to play around 10 minutes a night and they are going to give you 110% for all 10 of those minutes. Now, role players could be defined differently. Derek White used to be a role player. He's not anymore. I need someone that's going to go in, that's either going to be a hustle player, be an elite lockdown defender, or be an elite three-point shooter. So for today's video, we are going to talk about every team's best current role player. Some teams definitely have better role players than others. So we're going to start off with my favorite role player in the NBA right now, and that is TJ McConnell of the Indiana Pacers. There were talks that TJ McConnell should be playing over Tyrese Haliburton in the playoffs last year at certain times, especially when it came to guarding Jalen Brunson. TJ McConnell is going to get to the rim, he's going to be efficient at finishing inside, he's going to get his teammates involved, and he's going to be a pest on the defensive end of the floor. He's going to pick you up for a full court and press you all the way to the rim. And I think people finally realized how good of a role player he was in the playoffs last year, because I don't think the Pacers are in the Eastern Conference Finals without him. For the Cavs, it's a player they just recently re-signed, and that is Isaac Okoro. Hey, not every top 5 pick in NBA history is going to be an all-NBA member, but you got to figure out what you're good at and excel in that role, and that's what Isaac Okoro has done over the last couple of seasons for the Cavs. They don't need him to be a top scorer. They have that in Garland and Donovan Mitchell. They don't need him to be a top rim protector. They have that in Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, but Isaac Okoro has emerged into being one of the best perimeter defenders in the Eastern Conference and definitely the best perimeter defender on this Cavs team. And he's been getting better and better with his outside shot over the course of his career, 29% from 3 as a rookie, and last year in year number 4 on the same volume, 39% from 3. And if he could just master that 3-and-D role, he's going to be one of the more valuable players, making $12 million a year next year. For the Detroit Pistons, in my opinion, I think it's the most underrated player in the NBA. He was traded to Detroit last year, and what a pickup it was for them. Simone Fontecchio. Fontecchio spent the first year and a half of his career with the Utah Jazz, and last year, it was just a small sample size, but in 16 games for the Pistons, he took 12 shots a night, shot 48% from the field, but 43% from 3 on 6 attempts a night, averaged 15.5 points, 4.5 rebounds. He's extremely smart in the half court, and I don't know if he's going to start for this team because they have a lot of guys they brought in that are veterans from this offseason. They spent a lot of draft capital in the top 5 on wings that play the same position as Fontecchio, but either it's a starter as an off-ball player or coming off the bench, he's going to be extremely valuable to Detroit next season. For the Bulls, it got kind of tough figuring out who their best role player is. I know he's making a lot of money, but I don't think that should make you a role player or not. I'm going to go with Patrick Williams right now. I know people may think he's overpaid, but I actually think he got a pretty reasonable contract given what he did over the second half of his 2024 season. I know he was banged up, only played in 43 games, but if he could stay healthy towards the duration of year number 5, this guy is going to be an elite 3-and-D player at the power forward position, which could make you one of the more valuable role players in this league. Over his final 16 games before getting hurt, he averaged 12 points, 3.5 rebounds, 2 assists a night, and shot 50% from 3 on 4 attempts a game. And being 6'7" with his wingspan, he can guard 1 through 5 in a pinch. For the Milwaukee Bucks, this should be Andre Jackson or Marjon Beauchamp, but they've done a terrible job developing those guys so far, so I think it's going to go with 3-point sharpshooter AJ Green. AJ Green last year appeared in 56 games for the Bucks, averaged just 4.5 points a night, but he did shoot 41% from 3 on 3 attempts from 3 a night. And I think this year for the Bucks, he's going to be a very valuable player for them, especially in the playoffs. And if you look at over his final 25 games for the Bucks, he took 4 threes a night and shot 41% from 3. He's one of the best 3-point shooters in the sport right now. For the Portland Trailblazers, you could mention Denny Avdija, but I think he's too good to be considered a role player. So I'm going to go with Toumani Camara, who was the 52nd overall pick in the 2023 draft. This is a guy that is going to go out there and do the dirty work for you. He's going to go out, he's going to be physical inside, he's going to rebound on both ends of the floor, he's going to dive for loose balls, he's going to get into passing lanes, and he's going to be efficient inside the paint. He also wasn't terrible from 3 last year. I think Toumani Camara is going to be a legitimate rotational player for the Blazers this year, and it's going to be a very valuable role player for them. For the Utah Jazz, it's tough because they either have high-end players like Colin Sexton, Jordan Clarkson, or Valerie Markkanen, who just got paid a ton of money, or rookies on this team. Now, I'm going to go with Drew Eubanks as their best role player. It's definitely one of the worst role players we're going to mention in this video, but Eubanks isn't a bad backup center by any means. He's going to give you around 5 rebounds, 5 points a night. He's going to be efficient inside. He's going to try on the defensive end of the floor. He has his ups and downs defensively as a rim protector, and I wouldn't want him to be my top role player. And if I had to take a guess, I think that could be Cody Williams for Utah this year if he could buy into that role properly. The Nuggets are going to need him to be one of the best role players this year because they lost KCP in the offseason. That is Christian Brown. And Brown has proven to be a great role player for Denver so far. He was a vital part to their their championship team coming off the bench in his rookie season. And last year, he averaged 7 points and 4 rebounds a night and shot 38% from three. And if we're going to get that switchability on the defensive end of the floor, someone that can stay in front of some team's best guards or forwards while also being an elite three-point shooter on the other end of the floor, being a good ball handler and can get his teammates involved, get up and get rebounds, Brown is going to be extremely valuable for Denver this year in replacing KCP. Oh man, for the OKC Thunder, I think they have like two of the best role players in all of basketball. You could go with Lou Dort or Alex Caruso. I'll talk about their new guy in Alex Caruso. I think Caruso is also getting to a point where he may be too good to be considered a role player. Last year for the Bulls offensively, 10 points, 4 rebounds, 3.5 assists a night, and was an elite three-point shooter, 41% from three, and is one of the best defenders in all of basketball. Last year, he was named on all defensive second team, finished 10th in defensive player of the year voting, and he's one of the best guard defenders in all of basketball. He's an elite three-point shooter. He's exactly what you need to win a title, and OKC got that this offseason for Josh Giddey. The Minnesota Timberwolves, we're going to talk about Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and this is exactly how you can become a good role player in the league, and Naw is a perfect example. He was somebody coming out of Virginia Tech that was a primary scorer on the offensive end of the floor. At VTech, he was a sharpshooting three-point shooter. He shot 37% from three in his sophomore year, averaged 16 points a night, and it didn't really work out in that role over the first couple of years of his career with New Orleans and with Utah, but he reinvented himself over the last 2 years for the Timberwolves. He's someone that has turned into an elite defensive player in this system, and we saw that in full display in the playoffs against Phoenix, Denver, and even times at Dallas, being able to pick up some of their guards full court and could make their lives a nightmare with fellow defensive stud next to him in Jaden McDaniels. I mentioned Caruso and Lou Dort being arguably the best role players in all of the NBA. I think the Knicks have somebody up there as well, and that is Josh Hart. Hart last year in 81 games for the Knicks, 9.5 points, 8.5 rebounds, and 4 assists a night. But you look into what he was doing later in the year too, when they had all those injuries after the month of January. Hart basically averaged almost a triple-double every night. He averaged 12.5 points, 11 rebounds, and 6 assists a night over the last 2.5 months of the season. He was great against Philadelphia in round 1. He was still solid, not as good of a shooter against Indiana in round number 2, but he's going to be out there. He's going to be an Iron Man. He could play all 48 minutes for you. He's going to crash the offensive glass. He's the best rebounding non-big in all of basketball. He's going to get his teammates involved. He's going to take good looks. He's not going to force it, and he's a great finisher inside. Beautiful player in transition. There's an argument that Josh Hart is the best role player in the NBA right now. For the Brooklyn Nets, it's going to be Dorian Finney-Smith. And the reason why Dorian Finney-Smith is a good role player is the exact reason why he's probably going to get traded this year from Brooklyn as they enter their rebuild. Last year in 68 games for the Nets, 8.5 points, 5 rebounds, and shot 35% from three. He was inconsistent downtown, and that is going to be one of the flaws in Dorian Finney-Smith's game. But at times, he could be a great defender, and he can pick up wings and bigs on the defensive end of the floor. For the Pelicans, I'm going to go with Herb Jones, and I think he's kind of like Caruso, Josh Hart, and Lou Dort. That fine line. Are they too good to be a role player? Because if Herb Jones is still considered a role player, he's one of the best in the game. He turned into an elite 3-and-D player last year. There was no question marks about his defensive style of play. He was great in the first 2 years, and last year showed that he's one of the best perimeter defenders in all of basketball, up there with OG Anunoby and Jaden McDaniels. And he was on all defensive first team last year. He finished 5th in defensive player of the year voting, but also turned into an elite 3-point shooter, 42% from three on 3.5 attempts. And if he can continue to be that consistent of a 3-point shooter in the corner above the break, he's going to be right up there with Caruso next season. For the Dallas Mavericks, they lost their best role player in free agency to the LA Clippers. Some we'll get to later. So I'm going to go with the guy they got from New Orleans in Najee Marshall. Najee Marshall was one of the more underrated players in this league, and I think this contract is going to be an absolute steal for the Pelicans. And I think this contract is going to be an absolute steal for the Mavericks. Last year in 66 games, 7 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 2 assists a night, and just playing 19 minutes a night. He only started 1 game as well, but I think he's a plus defender on that end of the floor. He can guard some of the team's best wings, and I think he's also a plus offensive player. He knows when to cut. He knows how to have a feel for a game, playing with star ball handlers, and he's going to have that in Dallas playing next to Kyrie and Luka. He's a good 3-point shooter as well. For the Boston Celtics, it's going to be one of the best 3-point shooters in this role-playing role, and that is going to be Sam Hauser. Man, Sam Hauser being an undrafted player in the 2021 draft class turning into this is crazy. He didn't really play much in his rookie year, played a decent amount in year number 2 last year, 80 games, 16 minutes a night for the Celtics, but last year was so important to this team's championship squad. Averaged 9 points, 3.5 rebounds a night. He's going to crash the offensive glass, and he's an elite 3-point shooter, 42% from 3 on 6 attempts a night. Doesn't get much better than that, and that's why he was extended by the Celtics this offseason. For the 76ers, it's someone that I think is turning into a role player right now, and that is Kelly Oubre. I've raved about Kelly Oubre's defense all offseason long. I thought he was great against Jalen Brunson and the Knicks in round number 1, and with this team having enough scoring between Embiid, Paul George, and Tyrese Maxey, Kelly Oubre can really step up and show his value on the defensive end of the floor this season. And if he does that, it's going to make him a lot more money in the NBA in that role going forward. For the Toronto Raptors, I went between Kelly Olynyk and the guy I'm actually going to go with in Bruce Brown. We're a year removed from when Bruce Brown was listed as one of the best role players in the NBA when he was such a big part to the Nuggets championship squad in 2023 coming off the bench. We saw how huge of a loss that was last year for the Nuggets, and Brown last year was an interesting position. He got paid a ton of money by Indiana and then was included in the Pascal Siakam trade and wasn't traded from the Raptors this offseason. But Brown last year is still a solid player, 11 points, 4 rebounds, and shot 48% from the field. He needs to get back to being an above average 3-point shooter because we did see that in a good sample size in 2022 with Brooklyn and in 2023 with Denver. But he's a good off-ball player. He can crash the glass. He can get to the rim. I kind of want to see him on a winning team, and I hope we do so next year if the Raptors aren't good and decide to trade him. For the Memphis Grizzlies, I'm going with their breakout second-round pick last year who was in the 2022 draft, and that is Vince Williams. Vince Williams is just a winning style of player, and that is why he's going to have a big role for a good Grizzlies squad this year. He's someone that is going to score. He averaged 10 points a night. Now, I do expect that to go down with all these guys getting healthy, but he's going to get rebounds. He's also an underrated passer as well. I think he gets his teammates involved at a very good level. He shot 38% from 3. He's a good free throw shooter, and he is a very solid defender. And all those attributes can make you a good role player and can make you a very important rotational piece to a team that wants to win a title. This guy was such a good role player, I thought, coming out of LSU, and that's why I thought he should have won in the lottery back in the 2022 draft. He was hurt last year, and I think people are going to remember how good of a player he could be in a winning system, and that is Tari Eason of the Houston Rockets. Now, I do think Amen Thompson can also be somewhat of a role player in year number 2, but Eason can just do so many things well. He's a perfect hustle player. He's going to get up and down the floor. He's going to crash the glass. He's a solid 3-point shooter. He's a good defender. And I think the Rockets are going to need that. They have so many score-first guys. They're going to need somebody who can do the dirty work that doesn't really care on averaging 15, 20 points a night. They need someone that's going to get rebounds, going to play defense, and can provide winning basketball to Houston to help them make their first playoff appearance in a couple years. I'm going to say that Jalen Suggs is too good of a player to be considered a role player right now, so I'm going to go with their backup center in Goga Bitadze. Man, I really wanted my Knicks to pick up Goga this offseason because I think he's an underrated backup big man. He's not going to play too many minutes a night. He's clearly a backup right now to Wendell Carter Jr., but 15 minutes a night last year, 5 points, 4.5 rebounds. He's going to crash the glass on the offensive end of the floor, be super physical inside, and also do a great job on the defensive end of the floor. 1.2 blocks in 15 minutes a night. Would be almost 3 blocks a night per 36. I think Goga could actually be a starting center one day, and showing why he's definitely not a bust, being the 18th overall pick back in the 2019 draft. This is going to sound crazy, but I do think the best role player for the Hawks right now, I don't think he's going to be a role player for much longer after this year. It's the recent number 1 overall pick, Zachary Reese-Hachette. Yeah, I think Zachary Reese-Hachette is going to be a good off-ball defender immediately in his rookie season. He's going to be an above-average 3-point shooter, and it's only going to help that he's playing alongside one of the best playmakers in the NBA in Trae Young. I think Trae Young is going to make Reese-Hachette be a positive offensive player this year. I think he's going to be a positive defensive player. Now, I expect the Hawks to want to hope that he's going to be a top scoring option one day and no longer be a role player, but I think in his rookie year, he's going to be a good role player, and that's what the Hawks need him to be. For the Miami Heat, it's somebody that just goes through the Miami Heat factory, just turns into a great role player out of nowhere, and that is Haywood Highsmith. Haywood Highsmith is going to be someone that doesn't need to play too many minutes a night to be an impactful player. Last year in 66 games, he averaged 6 points, 3 rebounds a night, but shot 40% from 3 and was a dog on the defensive end of the floor. He's going to make really smart plays on that end. He's going to be able to switch on the defensive end of the floor. He's going to be able to read when plays are breaking down. I would like for him to be a little bit more consistent at attacking the rim and finishing inside, but if he could put all that together, it's going to show why Miami was smart to bring him back this offseason. For the Charlotte Hornets, it's someone they picked up for basically free this offseason, and that is Josh Green. They were able to take on Josh Green for basically nothing to help the Mavericks get Klay Thompson, and Green is a really good role player right now, and I think he's going to excel in that role like he was next to Luka and Kyrie Irving, but in Charlotte next to LaMelo and Brandon Miller. Green last year averaged 8 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists a night. He shot 39% from 3. He's really good in transition at finishing at the rim. I would like for him to be a little bit more consistent with his 3-point shot, especially late in games, but he's going to be a nice shooting guard between LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller on both ends of the floor. I didn't sell any of my stock from this player. He was banged up last year. I still think he could be a great role player, and that is Jared Vanderbilt of the LA Lakers. I was shocked for how little it took the Lakers to get him back in the 2023 season. They re-signed him on a big deal, and yes, he was disappointing last year, just appeared in 29 games due to injury. injury, and at times it felt like he couldn't hit a shot. But I think if he's fully healthy this year, he can go back to what he was in Minnesota and Utah and show that he could be someone that can crash the glass, run up and down the floor, and make winning plays on each end. He's someone that can finish inside, get his teammates involved, and play above average defense, and that's what the Lakers need from him next year. This player may be turning into too good of a player to be considered a role player, but I still think he's there. It's arguably the best three-point shooter in the NBA, not named Steph Curry, Grayson Allen. Grayson Allen last year in 75 games averaged 13.5 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists a night for the Suns. He shot 46% from 3, led the NBA in three-point percentage on 6 attempts a night. He's an elite free throw shooter as well. His season last year earned him another big contract in this league, but you can let me know in the comments if you think Grayson Allen is too good to be considered a role player right now. For the Sacramento Kings, it's going to be someone that broke out as a defensive stud in the second half, and that is Keon Ellis. Ellis was great defensively last year for the Sacramento Kings. He averaged 5.5 points and a steal a night in 17 minutes. And there were games last year where I watched him be a great defender on Jalen Williams, on D'Angelo Russell, Desmond Bane, Austin Reeves. And when he's guarding those players that have that similar archetype, he can make their lives a nightmare when he's on the defensive end of the floor guarding them. For the Golden State Warriors, I think it's going to be their current starting center in Trace Jackson Davis. Davis has been well worth the 57th overall pick in last year's draft in 2023. Physical player inside, efficient at the rim, is not going to make any losing plays whatsoever. He's a smart basketball player. It's exactly what they need at the center spot, somebody you just don't have to worry about, and he's still going to make winning plays for you. For the Washington Wizards, we're going to talk about the 15th overall pick back in the 21 draft, and we're going to talk about Corey Kispert. I said this when he got drafted, and I still feel it today. I think Corey Kispert really should have got drafted to a team that was in a win-now mode. Corey Kispert's skill set could be so useful to a team in the playoffs. When you need a big three, when you need to go on a run, he could be your guy. He's been nothing but elite from 3 in every year of his career. Year 1 was the worst three-point shooting season of his career, but he still shot 35% from 3 on 4 attempts a night. Year number 2, 42% from 3 on 5 attempts a night. And last year, upped the volume, but the three-point percentage was still really good. 6 attempts a night, 38% from 3. He could be a great wing for you off the bench in a playoff environment, and I really hope he gets traded at this year's deadline to a playoff team. For the San Antonio Spurs, it's going to be Victor Wembanyama's front court partner, Jeremy Sohan. It's been an up and down start to Jeremy Sohan's career, but I still think he could be a perfect role player in this league, especially next to Wemby. He's someone that could pass for his size, being listed at 6'8". He can handle the ball like a guard, he can score inside, he can knock down some threes, and he can also play defense at a high level on the perimeter and in the post. And I think last year really stumped his development just a little bit with the experiment with him at the point guard position, but this year he's going to be a full-time power forward now that the San Antonio Spurs have Chris Paul. So another year of experience next to Wemby, and can really mold into this great role-playing role for this Spurs team. I think he's going to be impactful on both ends of the floor. He's going to have a career year, and I think it's going to be a nice year number 3 for the former Baylor Bear. And lastly, we're going to talk about the LA Clippers best role player. It's somebody they signed this offseason that could hopefully replace Paul George on the defensive end of the floor, and that is Derrick Jones Jr. You could also give some love to Chris Dunn as well, but Derrick Jones Jr. was such a good defensive player for the Mavericks in the playoffs last year. In round number 1 against the Clippers, he graded out elite defensively. In round number 2 against OKC, he was great. In round number 3 against Minnesota, may have been his best defensive series in all of the rounds in the playoffs. And if he could just be more consistent of a three-point shooter, he's going to be extremely valuable for the Clippers this season. So that is going to be it for me. I hope you guys did enjoy. Let me know if you did by dropping a thumbs up. Let me know your team's best role player in the comments below if you think I got it wrong. Thank you all for watching. Love you guys, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.